a great guest. Chris Huston joins us. He has the Heisman Trophy Podcast, in which they launched one, or released the latest one today with Pat Forty, among other guests as well. Runs the Heisman Pundit and, of course, the Heisman Trophy, the ultimate award in all of college football as we started this weekend. Chris, thank you very much. Great to see you. Give me an idea. Now, you ran Carson Palmer and Matt Leinert's Heisman campaigns in the past. Did that lead you to kind of what you're doing now with the Heisman?
100%. During that time, I was like any other sports information director out there, trying to market my player, trying to get them an award that I thought they deserved. And the whole process of learning about the Heisman, learning about who is out there, who are the voters. During that whole process, I learned a lot about the Heisman, and eventually I started a blog, HeismanPundit.com. Mm-hmm. And just over time, I just gained a lot of expertise about it, and eventually the Heisman brought me on.
Chris, because you were on that side of it before you started this, do you see things that you see as flaws in the marketing or things that people are trying to do? Like what kind of gets your goat when you watch from the outside, knowing it, that you've kind of seen both ends of this?
Yeah, what gets my goat the most is when you see sports information directors or PR people sort of keeping their powder dry, not going all out for their guy. I think a lot of people are worried that if they do a campaign or if they make the case for their player, that it's going to blow up in their face and that it's going to reflect poorly on them. But I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think everyone knows that their player is potentially a Heisman winner, because anybody can win it, potentially. There's no restrictions. And I don't think enough PR people or sports information directors, or whatever you want to call them these days, because that whole profession is changing. I don't think enough of them understand that just having the name Heisman Trophy candidate in front of, having the words Heisman Trophy candidate in front of that name goes a long way to identifying a player as being a quality player. So I get disappointed when schools don't back their player.
Chris, is it impossible for non-offensive skill guys to win this award?
No, I don't think so. I think it would just take a lot of creativity. It would take what I've been calling for years is creating metrics that would enable voters to sink their teeth into the differences between players. For example, we have all kinds of metrics out there that are private when it comes to things like offensive linemen. You always talk about offensive line coach saying, oh, well, this guy graded well in this game, this guy graded well in another game. Well, let's see those grades. Let's know how many assignments this player was able to fulfill during the course of a game. These types of this type of data is important to be able to differentiate players. Now, it's going to be obviously a long haul because the Heisman starts with the ball. The person who touches the ball the most is going to have the best chance of winning, and that starts with the quarterback, running back, receiver. Where you can take the matters into your own hands and not have to depend on other people around you to make a great play. Quarterbacks have more of an ability to do that. So do running backs. Receivers a little bit less so because they depend on the quarterback. But non-skill offensive players, I think it's going to be a very tough situation. But that's why we have really smart people out there to come up with new angles.
So what was it like when the news came down that Reggie Bush was going to be reinstalled officially as a Heisman Trophy winner?
Well, I think for those of us who work with the Heisman, I think it was a relief. I think you go look at the list of Heisman winners, and there was this big gap for 2005. You'd go 2004, Matt Leinart, 2006, Troy Smith. They're just, it was a little bit awkward. So it's nice to have that resolved. It's nice to have the list complete. It's nice to be able to, for example, say USC has 8 Heisman winners instead of 7 with an asterisk and blah, blah, blah. And I just think it's great to just resolve that, get it all in the past, and move forward.
Chris, where do you start? Like when you start the season, I'm sure you have watch lists and all these different things that you do, but how do you start breaking it down into what's legitimate to follow and what you have to maybe put on the back burner?
As far as Heisman candidates?
Yeah.
You mean? Well, what I tend to do is I look at trends throughout the history of the race, and there have been several different eras and during the Heisman Trophy race that has resulted in certain positions dominating. In the 70s, you had the advent of these great running attacks: wishbone, flexbone, I formation over on the West Coast with USC. And so you saw from 1973 till 1983, running backs win the award every year, and then you had a few more after that. Eventually, as the game evolved, it became more of a sort of well-balanced group of winners. You had some quarterbacks, some running backs. That's when you had Charles Woodson come in and win it as basically a two-way player. But something happened around 2007 when Tim Tebow won, and that is with the advent of the spread offense and specifically the spread quarterback, you started seeing this incredible jump in the production of Heisman winners. You went from 2006, Troy Smith having roughly 2,500 yards passing. I think he had 30 touchdown passes. And you went from that to Tim Tebow suddenly producing over 4,000 yards of total offense, 51 touchdowns combined. And so over the course of the next several years, ever since 2007, every Heisman Trophy winning quarterback has averaged at least something like 4,300 yards of total offense, has compiled at least 40 touchdowns running and passing, has established a passing efficiency rate of at least a certain point, somewhere around 160 or above, 155 or above. So what I look for is who are these quarterbacks out there who have the potential to cross that, what seems to be this unofficial threshold of the last 15 years of you've got to produce numbers at this scale in order to be able to be considered a realistic Heisman candidate. So I look at the quarterbacks who have the potential in their systems with the players around them to put up those kinds of numbers. And I start from there.
What are your thoughts on the expansion of the playoffs? I mean, I know there's 1,000 other things that are different in college football nowadays, but this is obviously an award that's awarded before, the postseason. Otherwise there's the big, well, if it was later, Vince Young would have beaten Reggie, that whole conversation. But now you're going to have a team playing potentially, 4 playoff games if they don't get a bye in the first round. That won't affect the Heisman, but just what are your thoughts on having that extra element post December that is going to be there now?
Well, I think it's going to be more of a factor for the following year. You're going to have some guys who play 16, 17 games who have 6,000 yards passing, and they're going to be coming back for their next year. Maybe they're a sophomore when they did it and they couldn't go pro. So that's going to set up a lot of guys for the following season. You might get, a lot of what we see now, which is, this guy should have won because look at what he did. But I think that the Heisman, with all the tumult, all the chaos, all the change going on in college football, I think it's great that the Heisman is sort of the one thing you can latch onto, the one, the lighthouse in the storm that's not going anywhere, and having it be a regular season award where everything is pretty much equal. Now, it's true that some conferences have conference championship games and others don't, but that's starting to balance out a bit. And having the regular season, having it be a regular season award means that everyone plays the regular season. Not everybody plays the playoff. Not everybody's in a bowl game. Everyone is in the regular season, and you're comparing apples to apples. And I think having it as a regular season award, continuing to be so, and awarding that trophy the second Saturday in December, it's a great tradition. And if people want to argue about, this player should have won because look how well he did in the playoffs and look how poorly the winner did in that game, that's fine. And that's what college football is all about, just sitting around and arguing and trying to claim things that you can't really prove in the end, but they're fun to do.
Well, unless I'm wrong, the professional sports, NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, their overall MVP awards, aren't they very similar to the Heisman? They are regular season. It doesn't matter what a guy does in the postseason. It's who's the MVP of the regular season, because then there's a Super Bowl MVP or the finals MVP. So I love that, to keep it that way. But it does make it different now with the expanded playoff, without question.
Yeah, I think there's the opportunity now to have a playoff MVP in college football, and that'll be interesting. So, and of course the final game MVP, and all those awards are there for the taking. for these players. But the Heisman is a special award. It's got an incredible tradition going back to 1935. The who's who of college football have won it. Generally, the most outstanding players, at least arguably the most outstanding players in college football, are competing for it every year. And the player that enough observers of the sport decide and kind of crowdsource together on this, decide who's the one to win it. And that's the guy who generally captures the spirit of the regular season. And as college football has always had a great regular season, the best regular season in sports. And the Heisman's a testament to that.
We're talking to Chris Huston again. He's with the Heisman. He does the podcast, and he unveiled their podcast earlier. Houston, unveiled their podcast earlier today. Joined us on 365 Sports.
Chris, is there someone who has not won the Heisman since you've been doing this that you genuinely feel bad for?
I mean, there's these. Stanford had a stretch of Heisman runners up in the 2009 to 2016 period. Toby Gerhart lost by the closest race in Heisman history to Mark Ingram. Were it not for just a few ballots switched here and there, he wins the Heisman. And so I think Toby Gerhart might have been the guy who might have had the best case for why he should have won. Obviously had a great year. And then of course there was, Christian McCaffrey was a runner-up, but he was a runner-up to Derrick Henry. And then you certainly can't go wrong with Derrick Henry. So I don't really feel bad for any of them, but I certainly think that Toby Gerhart was a reasonable potential winner for Stanford.
Chris, do you ever think we'll see another back-to-back Heisman winner? We had that opportunity last year, and that seemed to get washed away pretty quickly with Caleb. Obviously, Jaden Daniels is off to the pros, but the historian in you, do you want to see it again, or is there something special about Archie Griffin being the only guy?
I don't know. It's a tough question. Every time someone seems like they might have a chance to do it, it's kind of intriguing. And maybe I think with Caleb Williams, I was thinking that potentially that he could be the one to do it. But I don't know. I think it's going to get harder and harder as the years go on because of things like the current media environment with short attention spans and just the way that all the pressure that's on these guys and the way that the sport is covered and always looking for the next new thing. And there usually always is a next new thing. So, and that's okay. I think it's fine that there's only one 2-time winner. I doubt there will ever be another one. I used to say that there will never be another one. I'll never say never, but I think the chances are very slim.
So what's it like working for where you are now? After someone who helped get Carson Palmer and Leinart in their situation, what's it like to be a part of that group?
That's pretty cool. It's great to be a part of this incredible tradition based in New York City. The Heisman is, and New York City is not a college football town, but it is the town for the Heisman Trophy. And being involved in that ceremony, the Heisman weekend, and seeing all the guys come back every year, and the camaraderie, the fraternity, getting the old stories, meeting the new winners and the new finalists who come every year. It's always a great experience touching base with some of the guys from the schools that are coming up that you've known over the years. Generally, just a fantastic experience. The Heisman's full of great people, and they do a great job. And they are very careful with taking care of the brand and image of the Heisman Trophy.
All right. So when you discuss what you did for Palmer and Leinart, do you consult others now? Do they reach out to you to get your advice on how to go about? Like we saw the Colin Klein. It was great. It was like a can with a Band-Aid on it. RG3 had that card with him. There's been some great PR campaigns. Do people consult with you?
I've had a couple people consult me over the years. If I was consulting with them right now, I'd say they should hire me some more because I've got a bunch of ideas every time, and I think that sports information directors are so darn busy through the years and throughout the season that they don't always have a chance to sit back and sort of let some ideas flow. And maybe that's kind of where I come in a lot of situations and trying to control the narrative of what constitutes a Heisman Trophy candidate. But you're right. There's been some great campaigns over the years. The Northwestern quarterback from around 2012, 2013, whose name escapes me right now. It was Dan something, but they sent out a pair of dumbbells. And I remember thinking, wow, this is really cool. And it definitely served to, they were always around. But I always thought the simplest, they're really hard to get rid of. How do you get rid of dumbbells? You can't really throw them in the trash. But, I think the simplest and most effective promotion that I think people don't do enough of anymore is the reporter notepad. You send out a reporter notepad to the media. And I remember back when I was in the media, I had this Iowa notepad. It wasn't even a Heisman candidacy. It was just Iowa honors candidates.
I know that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sitting on my desk.
Yeah. Those you go to practice, you go to a game, and each time you pull that thing out of your back pocket, you're seeing Iowa. Whether you know you're seeing it or not, you're seeing it. This is part of marketing. It's part of branding. There's a reason why companies spend billions of dollars every year on marketing. It's because it works. It's not because it doesn't work, but there seems to be, and you will see, like clockwork, every year there is an article written by somebody talking about Heisman campaigns, and they interview sports information directors, and to a T, almost every one of them will say that Heisman campaigns don't really work. And I think that's this sort of, there's a little bit of humility ingrained into the profession where it's like, we don't want to talk about our impact on these types of things because it's not seen as, I don't know, as it's maybe a little tacky to say, oh, I helped this person win. But it's true. Every little bit helps. And you should always err on the side of trying to help your guy win a trophy. When I was at USC, my motto was, it's my job to make an All-American out of someone who doesn't deserve it.
Wow. Yeah.
I think that the College Football Hall of Fame would be a cool exhibit to find, some of those things like Heisman marketing materials from the past.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Even ones that people who didn't win the Heisman, like Colin Klein Band-Aid thing, I kept that because I thought it was so cool. Threw about 4 moves before it finally just disappeared somewhere. So
Ryan Leaf had the leaf back in they sent out a leaf. Washington State sent it out. Oregon, you can look at the genesis of the Oregon football program. Really starts with Joey Harrington's billboard in Times Square, right? And it's people miss the point. It's not that it's the secondary coverage of the event, not the fact that the fact that there's a billboard was the story. It's not the fact that it's not going to be seen by any Heisman voters walking through Times Square necessarily. It's the fact that this is a big deal and we're going to talk about it, and people are going to agree with it or not agree with it. But everyone who listens to this is going to come away with the idea that this guy's a Heisman Trophy finalist or a candidate.
You can go to Heisman.com. You could also, on the top, they have the winners. They have the podcast, of which Chris is a part of. And I mentioned that they released an episode today. I never once received something in the mail, and I've been fortunate now for the last, 5 or 6 years or so to be a Heisman voter. But even well before that, I never received something in the mail that I thought was tacky. And it never I was like, ooh, I always thought it was pretty cool, people coming up with the different ideas. Do you get to, I would think so, but do you get to pretty much interview any Heisman Trophy winner you want based on their availability?
Oh yeah, just a little note on that. I think people like to pretend that these things are tacky, but secretly they gather them all together like army men and play with them.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree.
We have great access to a lot of Heisman winners. Last year we talked to Archie Griffin, we talked to Ricky Williams, we talked to Ty Detmer, we talked to Danny Werfel, we talked to a lot of guys I think who won in the 90s. Those are the guys who right now seem to be the most active with the Heisman organization, the 80s and 90s. I talked to Tim Brown as well. Unfortunately, some of the guys who are a little bit older, it's a little bit harder to get them wired up on a podcast like this. And we're trying to get some of the newer guys. Of course, a lot of the current guys are busy with the NFL. But yeah, we get a lot of great Heisman winners on the show. We talk, usually do a full deep dives into their seasons, find out what they were thinking. I mean, Barry Sanders, I got to interview Barry Sanders last year, and that was just outstanding because he's not a guy who's done a lot of media over the years. So getting him on the show is great. We even talked to Mike Krzyzewski, the Duke basketball coach, who is the Heisman's Humanitarian Award winner from 2022. This is an award the Heisman gives out because the Heisman is a charitable organization. They do a lot for underserved communities, and they honor every year a sports figure who has done a lot in that world, in the charity world. And Mike Krzyzewski was the winner in 2022, and I got to talk to Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, on one of the episodes last year. So that was really cool. So the Heisman opens a lot of doors as far as guests go, and I really hope that more people listen because it's a great show. There's great content. It's really unlike any show or any podcast you'll have out there. We try to do less and less of sort of, talking heads arguing about things, even though that's entertaining. With the Heisman, we wanted to tell stories, entertain, inform, and really connect people back to this great heritage and great tradition that is the Heisman Trophy.
Well, Heisman Pundit, of course, is where you can find Chris, but also Heisman.com/podcast for the latest podcast of the podcast. Also,
or any streaming network is the pod. You can find it at
Apple and all that.
Spotify,
yeah.
Apple,
Spotify.
all of it. Yeah, absolutely.
We will, and I hope we'll get back in touch with you, and maybe as the season progresses, pick your brain a little bit. We appreciate it. Great segment, Chris. We appreciate your time.
Loved being on here. Would love to come back. Thanks so much.
All right, Chris Huston with us.